Welcome to Scary Show. Today's first chilling story was sent to our studio by Ethan Miller, a man from New Orleans, Louisiana, who claims he survived something far darker than death itself. As you listen, I want you to imagine, what would you do if one day your ordinary life suddenly became a living nightmare, and you realized someone had cursed you with black magic? Let's begin. Ethan Miller was not the kind of man you would expect to be the target of something supernatural. He was a hard-working small business owner, a man who lived quietly in his neighborhood, respected by most of his clients. Life was simple: wake up, work, pay the bills, and go home to rest. But everything changed after an argument with one particular tenant. This tenant was an elderly woman, known in the neighborhood as Miss Clara. To most, she was just eccentric someone who always wore layers of black clothing, with necklaces of strange symbols, and kept her windows covered with red curtains. Rumors circulated about her, whispers that she practiced voodoo or some form of black magic, but Ethan never paid attention. He didn't believe in those things. Until the night everything began. It started after Ethan served Miss Clara with an eviction notice. She had been behind on rent for months. Ethan recalled the way she looked at him that day. Her wrinkled face didn't show anger. It showed something worse. Calmness. As if she knew something he didn't. She only said one thing before leaving his office. "You'll regret this. You'll see me even when I'm not there." At first, Ethan laughed it off. Just a bitter old woman trying to scare him. But that very night, he woke up at 3:07 a.m. with the sound of whispers around his bed. He lived alone, yet he swore he heard two, maybe three voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand. His room was ice cold, and as he turned on the light, nothing. The following days grew worse. Ethan began to feel weak, as though his energy was being drained. He would sleep for 10 hours, but wake up exhausted. He developed strange bruises and scratches across his arms and chest, marks he couldn't explain. His appetite vanished, and he began to lose weight rapidly. Then came the smell. It was a rancid, sulfur-like odor that clung to his apartment, no matter how much he cleaned. His neighbors didn't smell it. Only he did, and it always appeared strongest at night. One evening, Ethan returned home to find something waiting on his doorstep. A small cloth doll, its body bound tightly with black thread. Sticking out from its chest were several rusty nails, and tangled around its neck was a strand of hair, Ethan's hair. That was the moment the fear became real. Someone had taken something from him, something personal, and used it to bind this figure. He called a friend, who laughed it off as a prank. But the next morning, Ethan woke with deep scratches across his back, as if claws had torn into him while he slept. He had no pets, no intruders, just himself and something unseen. Desperate, Ethan sought help. He went to a local church, where he showed the priest the doll, the hair, the bruises. At first, the priest dismissed it, but when Ethan removed his shirt and revealed the cuts and burns across his skin, the priest fell silent. "This is not natural," he finally said. "Someone has marked you. This is black magic." That night, the priest visited Ethan's apartment with holy water and prayers. As he began the blessing, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. The lights flickered, and for the first time, Ethan saw her. At the corner of the room, standing in the shadows, was Miss Clara. Her body looked pale, her eyes burning with hatred. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared. The priest shouted, sprinkling holy water toward the figure, But in an instant, she was gone. Ethan broke down, begging the priest for help. The priest warned him, "This kind of curse is not easily broken. You must cut every connection, every tie, and never allow her spirit near you again." But how do you escape someone who can follow you even when you sleep? The torment grew worse. Ethan would wake up in the middle of the night to find handprints burned into his sheets. Once, he woke choking, as though invisible fingers were gripping his throat. Another time, he swore he felt the weight of a body pressing down on his chest, crushing the air out of him. His business collapsed. His friends stopped visiting. Nobody wanted to be around him because they felt uneasy in his presence. He was alone, completely isolated, exactly how the curse wanted him. Finally, Ethan decided to leave New Orleans, hoping distance would break the connection. He sold his belongings, abandoned his apartment, and moved to another state. For a while, things grew quiet. He thought it was over. Until one night, Ethan woke at exactly 3:07 a.m., the same time as before. He opened his eyes, and there, sitting in the chair across from his bed, was the doll. The same cloth figure, the same nails in its chest, the same black thread. He hadn't brought it with him. It had followed him. And just behind the doll, reflected in the mirror, was the faint outline of Miss Clara, smiling. Ethan says that even now, years later, he still feels watched. He hears footsteps when he's alone. Sometimes he swears he sees her reflection in glass, or feels her hand on his shoulder when no one is there. He sent this story to our studio, not for sympathy, but as a warning. Never underestimate the power of black magic. You don't have to believe in it for it to destroy you. So, what do you think? Was Ethan truly cursed by his tenant? Or was it the paranoia of a guilty mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy these terrifying true stories, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another nightmarish tale. So now let's move on to the next incident. This terrifying story was sent to our channel by Daniel Foster from Oklahoma, who insists that what he witnessed one night changed his life forever. He asked us to share it to warn others, not for entertainment, but as a lesson about the horrifying consequences of dabbling in black magic. He grew up in a quiet town in Oklahoma, a place where nothing exciting ever happened. Life was ordinary until his childhood friend Mark began showing an unusual fascination with the occult. While others were busy with sports, school, or weekend parties, Mark would read books on witchcraft, collect strange symbols, and explore dark rituals online. At first, he thought it was harmless curiosity. But Mark's obsession only grew. By the time they were in their 20s, Mark was consumed by the idea of gaining power through forbidden practices. One night, he approached him with a plan so chilling that it froze his blood. Mark had discovered that to perform a ritual of immense power, he needed bones, specifically bones freshly taken from the grave of someone recently buried. At first, he refused, thinking Mark was joking. But Mark's eyes were dark with determination, and there was no humor in his voice. "I can't do this alone," Mark said. "I need you with me." Against his better judgment, he agreed. He should have walked away. He should have reported Mark. But curiosity and fear combined to keep him silent. That night, the wind was sharp, and the clouds hid the moon. When they arrived at the cemetery, the iron gates groaned as they pushed them open, echoing into the still night. He had walked these grounds many times in daylight, but at night The cemetery was unrecognizable. The headstones loomed like silent sentinels, and the bare trees stretched their skeletal limbs toward the sky. Mark carried a backpack with a shovel and tools. He carried nothing, his heart already racing. They found the fresh grave easily. A mound of disturbed earth marked Richard Cole's beloved father. 1961 to 2023. As Mark pried the coffin open, the smell hit him first, a sour, rotting odor that made him gag. But Mark, unflinching, reached in and pulled out a fragment of bone. That was when the atmosphere changed. At first, it was a whisper, barely audible over the wind. Then it grew louder, a chorus of voices rising from the earth. Shadows shifted unnaturally among the headstones, and a cold presence pressed against him like icy fingers on his skin. Mark, entranced, didn't notice. The shadow moved toward him, a darkness darker than the night itself. He froze as the entity slammed into Mark. Mark screamed, a guttural, inhuman scream that pierced his ears and froze his blood. His body twisted violently, eyes rolling back, fingers clawing at invisible forces around him. He tried to pull Mark away, but a sudden force threw him to the ground. The earth trembled as if the cemetery itself were alive. Gravestones rattled, and the cold seemed to seep into his bones. By the time the shadow receded, Mark lay still, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the sky. He ran. He couldn't remember how he got home. The sound of Mark's scream echoed in his mind for days. The next morning, he learned that Mark had died mysteriously in his apartment. The coroner cited a seizure, maybe a heart attack, but he knew the truth. He had witnessed forces beyond comprehension. He never returned to that cemetery. Even driving past, it would make his skin crawl. Sometimes, late at night, he swore he could hear whispers, like the shadows of that night were still calling. And he wondered whether Mark's soul had found peace, or if he was trapped forever, bound to the darkness he had unleashed. He shares this story with all of you as a warning. Black magic is not a game. Curiosity, greed, and the desire for power can bring forces into your life that cannot be undone. If anyone listening has ever encountered something similar, share it in the comments. These stories remind us that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we want to believe. Don't forget to subscribe to Nocturnals so you never miss a terrifying story. So now let's move on to the next incident. Welcome back to our channel, the show where we bring you the darkest and most chilling true stories submitted by our listeners from around the world. Next story was sent to our studio by Michael Turner from Arizona. He wanted to share this terrifying event to warn others never to underestimate places that feel wrong. Michael's experience happened in the summer of 2015. At the time, he was in his mid-20s, working as a delivery driver. His job often took him to long stretches of desert highways, lonely towns, and eerie stops in the middle of nowhere. One evening, his truck broke down near an abandoned roadside motel just outside of Holbrook, Arizona. The sun was setting, the desert air was cooling fast, and the silence around him felt strangely heavy. He called for roadside assistance, but they told him it would take nearly 2 hours to reach him. With nothing else to do, Michael decided to wait inside the motel property, just to get away from the desert wind. The motel had been shut down for decades. The windows were shattered. Weeds had pushed up through the cracked parking lot, and the faded neon sign still faintly clung to the words Desert Star Motel. As he stepped inside, Michael instantly felt uneasy. The air was stale, carrying a smell of rot and damp wood. The lobby was covered in dust, and broken furniture lay scattered as if people had left in a hurry. At first, he explored just to kill time. He found old guest books, torn magazines, and rusty keys hanging behind the counter. But then he began hearing something like footsteps above him in what should have been an empty second floor. He froze. The building had no electricity, no working stairs, and yet it sounded like someone was moving slowly across the old wooden floorboards. Trying to shake it off, he told himself it could be animals nesting up there. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On the dusty reception desk, there was a fresh handprint. Not old, not faded, fresh. The size of a child's hand. Michael backed away, his heart racing. He decided to wait outside, but before leaving, he glanced toward the hallway leading to the guest rooms. One of the doors, room 6, was wide open. The strange thing was, all the other doors were shut tight, some even boarded up, except for that one. Drawn by a mix of fear and curiosity, Michael stepped toward it. The closer he got, the colder the air became. The desert heat seemed to vanish at that spot. Inside, the room was dark, except for the moonlight slipping through a broken curtain. He saw an old bed frame, a broken lamp, and on the wall, words written in what looked like dried black paint, or maybe something worse. The message read, "They never leave." At that moment, Michael heard breathing. Not his own, but heavy, raspy breathing coming from the corner of the room. He turned his phone's flashlight toward the sound, and for just a split second, he saw the outline of a man crouching there, his eyes reflecting the light like an animal's. But before Michael could react, the figure darted forward, and the light on his phone went out. He stumbled backward, running out of the room and through the lobby as the sound of footsteps followed behind him. Somehow, he made it outside, gasping for breath. But the strangest part came when he turned to look at the motel one last time. Every single room light was on, all at once. The motel had no power, no electricity for decades, yet every window glowed with a pale yellow light, like someone had turned the place alive again. And in the glow, Michael swore he saw shadowy figures moving from room to room, watching him leave. By the time roadside assistance finally arrived, Michael was pale and shaking. He didn't dare tell the driver what he had just experienced. But later, when he searched online, he discovered that the Desert Star Motel had closed in the 1980s after multiple guests vanished without explanation. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened inside those rooms. Michael says he'll never forget that night. He still drives past the area sometimes, but he swears the motel looks different depending on when you see it. Sometimes it looks old and broken down, just like any other abandoned place. But sometimes it looks as though it never closed at all. So, what do you think? Did Michael encounter restless spirits trapped in the Desert Star Motel? Or is there something even darker hidden in that place? If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and of course, subscribe to our channel for more terrifying true experiences. Let's begin the next scary story. This terrifying story was sent to our studio by a man from Salem, Massachusetts. His name is Marcus Holloway. What happened to him inside an abandoned library one stormy night has haunted him ever since. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Marcus Holloway had always been drawn to places most people would avoid. At 32, he worked as a freelance photographer, specializing in abandoned buildings and forgotten corners of cities. His fascination was simple: beauty in decay. But beneath that artistic curiosity, there was an insatiable appetite for the unknown. One evening, Marcus stumbled upon a local forum filled with accounts of strange occurrences. One thread caught his attention: a library on the outskirts of Salem, abandoned for over 50 years, reportedly the site of black magic rituals decades ago. The posts warned of shadows moving without a source, whispers that followed visitors home, and mysterious marks appearing on people who dared enter. Marcus chuckled at first, brushing the warnings aside. But the thought of capturing photographs in a place steeped in such legends was irresistible. He booked a night for himself and packed his equipment: camera, flashlight, notebook, and a portable voice recorder. He arrived just as twilight began to fade. The library stood at the end of a narrow lane, its brick facade crumbling and windows coated in dust. A thick fog hung low, curling around the steps like ghostly fingers. The front doors were unlocked, groaning ominously as he pushed them open. Inside, the air was heavy and still. Dust motes floated in the beam of his flashlight. Shelves, once filled with books, leaned precariously, their contents long gone. As he stepped further in, Marcus felt a subtle shift in the temperature, a chill that wasn't entirely from the night air. He started photographing the rooms, documenting the decay and the eerie symmetry of the architecture. But then he noticed something that made him pause: a strange symbol painted on the floor in one of the central halls, surrounded by scorched marks and faint traces of melted wax. 4 small blackened candles flickered weakly, as if powered by some unseen force. Marcus knelt down, sketching the symbol in his notebook. That's when he heard it: a whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, coming from all directions at once. He spun around with his flashlight, but the hallway was empty. A shadow shifted across the far wall. Marcus froze. The shadow seemed humanoid, but distorted, with long, uneven limbs and glowing red eyes. It moved closer, and a voice echoed inside his mind, low and commanding. "You have copied my mark. Now your soul belongs to me." Marcus tried to scream. Nothing came out. He stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen shelf. The shadow advanced with unnatural speed, and unseen hands gripped his shoulders, pinning him down. The candles flickered violently, casting grotesque moving shapes across the walls. Time stretched, distorted, and Marcus lost track of reality. Whispers, laughter, and chants merged into a deafening crescendo. Then darkness swallowed him. When he awoke, dawn had broken. He was lying at the edge of the library, soaked from the fog, with bruises foaming along his arms and neck. His notebook lay open beside him, the symbol now etched in red, almost glowing ink. His camera still held the images he had captured, but each photo showed subtle differences he hadn't seen before. Shadows in corners that weren't there when he photographed, faces barely visible in the darkness. In the days that followed, Marcus noticed changes in his environment and in himself. Shadows in his apartment moved independently. Whispers echoed through empty rooms. Sometimes he would wake in the middle of the night to find himself staring at glowing red eyes in the corners of his vision. He could feel a weight pressing down on him, especially when he tried to sleep. Friends noticed his withdrawal. He stopped photographing, avoided going out at night, and refused invitations. But the most terrifying moments were those when he was alone. The whispers, the feeling of unseen hands brushing against him, and the symbol appearing in strange places, in his mirror on the inside of his notebook, even once burned briefly into his forearm as if branded. Marcus sent this story to us to warn others. Some curiosities are deadly, especially those tied to forces beyond human understanding. Certain marks, certain rituals, are never meant to be disturbed. If you've ever been tempted to explore abandoned places, think twice. Not everything left behind is empty or forgotten. Some things are waiting, watching. Remember Marcus Holloway's warning. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so you will never miss another terrifying experience shared by viewers from around the world. Let's begin the last and most terrifying story of this episode. This terrifying story was sent to our studio by a man from Boston, Massachusetts. His name is Daniel Whitaker. What happened to him during a night at an abandoned carnival has haunted him for years. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Daniel Whitaker had always been drawn to the strange and forgotten corners of Boston. As a freelance journalist, he thrived on stories that combined history, mystery, and danger. On a rainy November evening in 2015, he stumbled upon an old thread in a local forum discussing a long-abandoned carnival on the outskirts of Boston. It had been shut down abruptly in the 1970s, and locals whispered of strange disappearances and unexplainable sightings near the grounds. Despite the warnings, Daniel's curiosity got the better of him. He decided to explore the carnival himself, hoping to capture photographs, record sounds, and maybe even uncover the truth behind the urban legends. Armed with a flashlight, camera, notebook, and a portable voice recorder, he drove to the location, arriving just as the last light of day faded. The carnival grounds were shrouded in fog, making the air thick and heavy. Rusted rides loomed in the mist, their skeletal frames creaking in the wind. A Ferris wheel, frozen in time, towered above him, its cabin swaying slightly despite the absence of any human presence. Booths lined with peeling paint and broken glass sat in eerie silence. The scent of decayed popcorn and rotting wood hung in the air. As Daniel wandered deeper, he noticed strange symbols etched into the ground around the main pavilion. The shapes were unlike anything he had seen, geometric yet organic, almost alive. Nearby, he found a tattered notebook wedged beneath a collapsed tent. Flipping through it, he read entries detailing rituals, summoning chants, and warnings written in a shaky hand. Do not disturb what sleeps here. The carnival remembers. It takes those who trespass. Laughing nervously, Daniel pocketed the notebook. Just more old hysteria, he muttered to himself. But as night fell, a sense of unease began to creep in. Shadows moved independently of the trees and buildings. Soft laughter echoed through the grounds, though he saw no one. He set up his camera to take a long exposure of the Ferris wheel. As the shutter clicked, Daniel noticed figures in the shadows, watching him. Tall, thin, and unnaturally still. When he moved the flashlight, they vanished, only to reappear elsewhere. Panic prickled at the back of his neck. Determined to document everything, Daniel walked toward the funhouse. Its entrance sagged under years of neglect. The smell of damp and decay hit him immediately. Inside, mirrors reflected not only his own image, but also shapes that shouldn't be there dark. Humanoid forms, with glowing red eyes and mouths twisted into silent screams. As he ventured further, the temperature dropped drastically. His breath fogged in the air. Then he heard a soft, melodic chant echoing from deep within the funhouse. It was slow, hypnotic, and unnerving. The voice seemed to call directly to him, whispering his name. Daniel, Daniel, you shouldn't be here. Against his better judgment, he followed the voice into a small circular room at the heart of the funhouse. There, on the cracked wooden floor, was a circle of dolls, each positioned meticulously, their glassy eyes staring up as if expecting him. In the center of the circle, a small flame flickered atop a pile of blackened candles. Suddenly, the doll's head slowly turned in unison toward him. He froze. The chant grew louder, filling the room, vibrating through his bones. Daniel's flashlight flickered and went out, plunging him into darkness. A cold, invisible pressure pressed down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Then, from the shadows, came a figure tall, shrouded in black, with hands elongated into claws. It whispered again, closer this time. You cannot leave. The carnival chooses. Daniel tried to back away, but his feet felt glued to the floor. The dolls began to twitch and move, inching toward him with jerky, unnatural motions. He fumbled for his flashlight, finally turning it on, and screamed. The beam revealed dozens of figures emerging from the shadows, each one pale, gaunt, and hollow-eyed. They weren't human. Heart-hammering, Daniel bolted for the exit. The carnival seemed endless, corridors twisting in impossible ways. Rides that had been far away were suddenly in front of him. Every time he looked back, the figures multiplied, following silently. Finally, he burst out into the night air. The fog had lifted, leaving the carnival in eerie stillness. He ran to his car, hands shaking, voice hoarse from screaming. Driving away, he dared a glance in the rearview mirror just once. For a fleeting moment, the Ferris wheel moved on its own, the cabins filled with shadowy silhouettes, silently waving goodbye. Back at home, Daniel reviewed his photographs. Every image contained something extra. Figures in doorways, glowing eyes in empty spaces, shadows moving where there were no sources. The notebook he had found had vanished, leaving only a faint scent of burned wax. Daniel sent this story to us to warn others. Some curiosities are not meant to be satisfied. Some places are better left alone. And some nights, the forgotten carnival remembers, and it waits for its next visitor. If you ever come across an abandoned place that whispers, watches, or moves on its own, remember Daniel's experience. And please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to hear more stories sent in by viewers who survived the terrifying unknown. As of today, we are saying goodbye to our horror show. We will be back with some more scary stories in the next episode. Until then, everyone stay well, and of course, be careful. Goodbye.